All right. Well, Leanne Morgan, welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you for having me. I am thrilled out of my mind. And I was telling the producer that I have loved my Southern living, and I've got the newest issue on my kitchen table.
Oh, good. We'll spend the weekend with it.
Okay, I will.
Well, so where am I reaching you right now? Are you at home?
I'm at home, not much longer, but I'm at home in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay. Well, I love some Rocky Top and Go Vols, and we'll have to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Well, listen, congrats on the book. It must be really exciting for you to have that coming out, and I know you've been working really hard on it, and it's great. I haven't seen it a real copy, but I got the PDF and I've been reading it, and it's great.
Oh, you angel. Thank you, Sid. It has been a lot of work, but I felt like I had it in me years ago. I thought, I know I've got a book in me. And I'll just tell you, I wanted to tell every horrible thing I ever did in the 80s. And my literary agent, who is a doll, said, You're not Joan Crawford yet, Leanne. Let's do this first, a funny essay to get people to know who Leanne Morgan is, and then maybe a cookbook. And then let's talk about all the horrible things you did in the 80s. But in this book, it's me smoking behind a dumpster, said, at the University of Tennessee, making horrible decisions.
I mean, it's not that horrible, but you just kind of told the truth. I mean, you just sort of laid it out, right? I mean, this is kind of what happened. This is your story.
I did, being from a farming community of 500 people and wanting to be in show business.
Yeah.
All that.
So it's called What in the World? Although the way you say it, it sort of stretches out a little bit more. And the subtitle is A Southern Woman's Guide to Laughing at Life's Unexpected Curveballs and Beautiful Blessings, which I love. Tell me about the title. Like, how'd you land on that?
I feel like I just say, what in the world? All the time. I found myself saying, what in the world? Because all this has blown up for me in my 50s after doing comedy for over 25 years. And I just found myself going, what in the world? And getting a movie with Reese Witherspoon and Will Ferrell, and getting a television series on Netflix, and getting more Netflix specials, and all these things happening to me at my age when I just did not I thought I was going to make it. But then there was, times when I'd start thinking, oh no, nothing's going to come of this, and it's not going well and all that. And it's just every day I'm just amazed at it. I'm amazed at it. And then I thought, the curveballs and the blessings, I talk a lot in the book about, just ups and downs in my career, but also ups and downs that my family has been through, that everybody, people, it's always things happen when, in life, there's valleys and mountaintops. And so I talked about that, but the blessings that come out of those things, that silver lining that you don't see at the time, but then you look back and think, oh my gosh, that was how it was meant to be.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was meant to be, and you knew it was going to happen. I mean, it sounds like you knew since you were, 6 years old that you were going places, right? So you shouldn't be that surprised.
I did. I really thought it, but I tell you, Sid, I got a little freaked out in like my early 50s. I was at the end of perimenopause, and I went out to eat with Chuck Morgan, my husband, and I started crying, and I said, I don't think this is going anywhere. I don't think I can keep going. And I said, I think, Chuck, I want to open up a hardware store, and I want to have a big cheese wheel, and I want to have rocking chairs where people can gather, and I'll just dazzle people in those rocking chairs. And he went, you've lost your mind, Leanne. So then, that was his way of helping. So after that, I thought, okay, I'm going to give it one more shot. And that's, I swear, when things blew up. I was just about to give up and go to work somewhere. I thought maybe pop popcorn at a NASCAR track. I thought that'd sound fun, or Target in the bedding. I really did. I thought I've got to do something because I've always had a side hustle. Said I came from people that had farming people, but had a business, a meat processing plant. We did everybody's deer and hogs and beef, and so I just have always liked to make my own money and have something going.
Yeah. Well, a side hustle is always a good idea, especially for editors. Well, so tell me a little about growing up in Adams, Tennessee. And you said, I think you had a line in the book. You said it was so close to the Kentucky border, you could almost throw a piece of fried chicken over the line. What I'm curious how much Adams has changed. I mean, what is the Adams that you grew up in? What did that look like compared to kind of where Adams is now?
Okay, it's 500 people on the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and so we feel very close to Kentucky. I know we're in proximity to Kentucky, but I was born in Kentucky, and then my people came over. Had always been in Adams and had farms, but my little daddy worked as a butcher at Kroger over in Bowling Green. But anyway, Adams was a Church of Christ, a Baptist, and a Methodist church. Everybody went to church. It was a lot of older people that had, for generations, families have lived there that have farmed on both sides, like my people.
Three churches for 500 people.
Yeah, little churches, little bitty churches with 50 people, maybe 100. But everybody, I'm not kidding, like took care of their crops and went to church. That's what we did, and went to ball games. To our little bitty high school that was Future Farmers of America, Home Economics. They really, we had some pre-college courses, not many, because they knew we were all going to get out and farm. A lot of people did, but now it's, farming's like big farmers that have taken over, like they lease little farms from people. And so you could tell like a lot of old people died off and now it's younger people because the housing, everybody needs housing. These houses have kind of gotten run down, and it's people that have moved in to find affordable housing who we've never seen them before in our lives. There's a new Dollar General store, and I'm telling you, it's hopping. And every time I go home and I go to the Dollar General, it's a good one. Every time I go, I think, who are these people? And my little mom and daddy will say, we have no idea who they are. So there's certain families that have been there, for generations, and my family, one of them, but it's a lot of new people, but not as much farming going on. Still farming, but big farmers lease everybody else's land.
But you still have some family there?
Oh, yeah. I've got my little mom and daddy. We've got a farm. We still have our farm. We lease it out to the Baggetts, who I went to high school with, probably made out with a couple of them. They all grow dark fire tobacco, alfalfa, soybeans, corn.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, there's, what did you ask me? Sid, I got to thinking, should I have said I made out with somebody on Southern Living? Biscuits and Jam.
It's just fine. We're in a safe space.
Okay, good. All right.
No, I was just asking about Adams, and how much it's changed, and because Nashville is so big and growing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not that far from Nashville, and I wonder if it starts to feel like there's Nashville people coming in, or that are even driving into Nashville, most days.
There are. And my little daddy, his dream is for us to hold on to this land and someday somebody develop into a neighborhood. It's 100 acres, but people, it's close to the interstate. So yes, people are coming. Nashville's moving that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you were talking about your dad working in the store and was a butcher, and he worked at a Kroger. And you talk about growing up kind of in a grocery store. Which sounds like it was as much of a social hangout as it was a place to shop. So I'm wondering if you can kind of describe the store for me. I mean, I have something in my mind based on what I read in the book, but tell me about kind of what it looked and felt like when you go in there.
Okay, my darling. It was right next to Corky's, which was the gas station, and that was Corky, and he had a son that became an OBGYN. So they were kind of like our Elvis, because he got out and became a doctor. But anyway, Corky's gas station, and everybody got their gas and they could charge it. And my sister would drive back and forth from Austin Peay State University and charge her gas and then drive back. Okay, and then next to that was our little store. And my Uncle Raymond and Aunt Lila owned it before my daddy went. We had it. And you walk in, and it was tiny, and there was a little office, but there was one conveyor belt, thing, and a cash register. And there was one little tiny aisle of paper products that I loved. And I would get in there and just write and scribble in that paper. And then there was a candy aisle, and then canned goods and Daddy's and bread on the right. And then Daddy had the meat, cut meat, and the, your hamburger meat and all that in the back. And then behind that they would store the Tab, Coca-Colas, all of that, toilet paper. We would get these big boxes in that held toilet paper, and I would play in them, like it was a playhouse, had a ball. And they would, they'd go back there and eat lunch or whatever. And my granddaddy, all my family, extended family worked in it. And then Mama's friends, Margaret, and some other women, and they all smoked and had a ball and laughed. And I sprayed Lysol. That was what I did for fun. I sprayed Lysol in the back, and they would smell it and go, "Quit spraying this Lysol." And my sister is older than me, and she was rail thin. Of course, we were country people who grew our own vegetables and killed our own hogs. So she was thin as a rail, and she would eat sweet tarts and Red Hots and steak and faint and was frail. And on Mondays, and I wasn't chunky because I didn't eat processed food either, but I was stockier than her. I had a stronger constitution, let's say that. Yeah. And I would eat pinto beans and cabbage, and my parents would brag on me and say, "Beth is frail. She's about to faint. Look at Leanne. She eats pinto beans and cabbage." And that's how they bragged on me. But anyway, we would work every Monday to put up cans in the store. That was the day where you replenish. And we just took it like, we were little bitty, but we just thought, well, Lord, we've got to keep this store running. And I think I was in kindergarten, and Mama didn't make me go to kindergarten. And I hate to even say that on this, but that was in Tennessee before the law, before you had to go to kindergarten. But she wanted me to go, but I was 4. I hadn't turned 5 yet. And she goes, "You're smarter than all these people. You really don't have to go if you don't want to. You still need a nap." So I would go to the store, or we would stay at home and watch Hollywood Squares. But I would sit in her lap, and she would ring people up. And I say in the book, she had a hairpiece that she would put in sometimes, and she looked like Bridget Bardot to me. I've got a really pretty mama, and she would talk to, we knew everybody. It was all farmers, all their wives, all their, kids. And we just, people came in there and stood around and talked, and, somebody'd be hanging out of the office, smoking, and everybody would just stand around and talk. And we had a ball, and people would be back there and watch Daddy cut meat. And it was fun.
Yeah, it sounds fun. And, it sounds like it was the place to be. I mean, that and the funeral parlor, right?
Oh, we loved the funeral home. That was the only other business there. So it was Corky's, Mom and Daddy's, and then the funeral home. And Emerson Meggs ran the funeral home, and he was so smart, and he sang in our choir, and he fell asleep a lot because he was having to tend to dead, all that during the week. But precious. But the funeral home was on the way down. So like a mile and a half from my house, from where I was, my little mom and daddy still lived there. And it's surrounded by cows and mules and, all that, and hogs, farms on both sides. And Mama did not learn how to drive until she was 42, I think. And it sounds crazy to me.
How did that work?
Because Mama was raised on a farm and drove a tractor probably from the time she was 9. And she goes, I just never got my driver's license. And then she married my daddy, who's a worrywart, and probably, sent and said, "You're going to kill yourself. And then you're not going to, you're going to run into something, Lucille." And so she didn't want to hear it. So she just didn't drive. And then at 40 something, I mean, she ran a business and so smart. But anyway, so then she would say, Daddy would already be down the store, and she'd say, why don't we just walk down, see if anybody's in the funeral home? And she might need a pack of cigarettes or something. And so we would walk down to the store. We walked everywhere because she couldn't drive. Sometimes we'd catch the school bus when Beth would get on the school bus, and I wasn't old enough to be on the school bus yet, not in school. And Lucille would flag down the school bus, which was driven by Kitty Bell, who was one of her good friends, went to high school with her. And she'd say, Kitty Bell, can I have a ride? That's probably against the law. We get on the school bus, ride down with Kitty Bell, and she'd drop us off at the store. But we would walk by the funeral home, get into the store, and Mama she'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody's in the funeral home. Let's go see who. And everybody knew everybody. So I've walked in. You won't believe how many corpses I've seen.
Oh gosh.
And we would all just walk in and visit and see who's there. We knew everybody there. It was not, growing up in that was not weird to me. I never was scared of death, scared of a body. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the funeral home.
Wow.
But it was, it's just a small town, and that's just what we did. It may not I know that sounds like something Andy Griffith, but they really didn't go to the funeral home on that. But we did. My mama's a talker and loves people, and my dad does too. And we would just stop by the funeral home, then go to the store.
I want to hear about your mom and her skill at being able to skin a deer. So your dad was working as a butcher at Kroger in Kentucky, you mentioned.
At the Kroger, and then worked at the little grocery store in Adams. My Aunt Lionel and Uncle Raymond asked him to come run it. So he was cutting meat in the back and really trying to have a grocery store. But, they tell me, I was a child, but back then farmers would charge their accounts. And I know that does sound like Andy Griffith. Charge their accounts and then pay when their crop came in. So there just really wasn't a lot of money in it. So my little daddy noticed how everybody, and I say my little daddy, he's 6'2", but now he's 84. He was always a tall, strong man. And you should have seen his arms back then. He still got good arms, and I got his arms. Hallelujah. But he can, cutting up meat, you should have seen him. Wiry, muscled up. Anyway, people started asking him to cut up their meat. And so he took a big jump and opened up a meat processing plant behind our house, up on a little hill behind our house. And my little mama did the accounting, and she took the orders and did all that and wrapped the meat. And my daddy butchered, and then we had both granddaddies worked in it, and my aunts and a lot of family members, and me and my sister, even though we were not good help because it was the 80s and we hot rolled our hair and we were sissy. But okay, so Lucille, people would come, you talking about a gathering place. They even gathered more at the meat processing plant than they did the store, because there was the area where they did all that, and they had the freezers and the stainless steel tables and all that. And then she had an office with a Coca-Cola machine, and everybody would come and get a Coca-Cola and sit around and talk. And old men like to come and just sit around. But my mama could skin a deer with a golf ball in less than 2 minutes. And people come to watch Lucille during deer season.
I bet they did.
And my mama is a very feminine, beautiful, funny, darling. And I think about her up there with the toboggan on because it was cold, and she worked like a man, and then would give me and my sister cash money to go to the mall and buy an outfit. We should have been whipped, Sid. But anyway, she would skin these deer, and then my daddy would cut them up, and then during deer season, Beth and I they would need us to help. And deer meat is sticky. And I mean, and when you ask me, did I ever learn how to skin a deer with a golf ball? No, I walked inside because I could not take it. And I promise you, I was a vegetarian. They opened it when I was in 6th grade, and I was so freaked out because I'd been around all this, but I didn't see like actual hogs hanging in a freezer and deer during deer season hanging in the trees. If it was cold enough, because they got so busy. Because back then, there weren't that many kind of businesses like that. And people came from Tennessee, Kentucky, everywhere for my mom and daddy to do their meat. And then cows. So my sister locked me in a freezer when I was in 6th grade and would not let me out for a while. She finally let me out.
I mean, that's dangerous.
I know. But I turn around and look at a hog hanging, hadn't taken its head off yet. And I did not eat meat until I got away and went to the University of Tennessee in 1983. And I went in the cafeteria and was able to eat a hamburger. It took me a while. But anyway, and we had our own garden behind the meat processing plant. Mama had a whole garden. And then out at our farm, we had another garden. And so, I mean, I was raised like Little House on the Prairie. And then she would go into town once we closed our store. They would ride into town like Gunsmoke and get just, what you absolutely had to have: sugar, flour. I mean, she bought Little Debbie's every once in a while, oatmeal pie, and I never liked them, but Beth did. And I look back on pictures, and Beth and I looked like ghosts. We were so thin, but it's because we ate off the land.
Well, I'm not surprised you became a vegetarian for a while.
I did. Now I'm back on that meat, but
well, and you said that the holidays, and particularly around Thanksgiving, I mean, everybody else was celebrating Thanksgiving, but of course that was the peak of deer season. So I guess y'all were working like crazy trying to deal with all the deer that were coming in.
We were, and deer season would open where I'm from on Thanksgiving Day, I think. It fell on that. I don't know. They were just always like, you got to work. And we used to, before that, we opened that, we'd have a big Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving, but we had to wait till Sunday afterwards because we had to work, and and they would get people from the community that would help us because we had so many people coming in with deer.
Yeah.
And then they had to hang them in the trees sometimes if it was cool enough. And then all of our dogs, well, we always had these stray dogs around because we had all this meat scraps left over. So these dogs would be fat as mud. And Daddy never taught me how to drive because I didn't want to hear the fussing. And so I would back over a beagle and it'd be like boom. And that beagle was so heavy, he would just get up and walk over and be fine.
Leanne, this would have been a pretty good Netflix special. If maybe y'all could recreate it.
Well, and seeing telling it, and I know I've written it, but telling it to you, this is the first time I've ever really told anybody what's in that book. And it sounds crazy, but that's what we did. And my little mom and daddy, it was a successful business. They stayed covered up all the time. And because now, everybody wants to know where their meat comes from and get grass fed and all that, but that's what they were doing. And they put me and my sister through college and worked like mules for us.
Leanne, I want to ask about something that you are known for, which is your accent. I know this accent. I've heard this accent. I grew up in Tennessee, and I know people who sound like you.
Thank you, Sid.
But you're on tour. You're going all over the country. You're going to places like you're going to New Jersey, and there are probably a lot of people that have never heard someone that sounds like you before. And I'm just curious, does your family sound like you? Does the rest of your family have this kind of accent? Or is this kind of common to Adams? Or is it more unique to you?
My sister sounds just like me. I think we sound like our mama. And I have been told that there's this little pocket in Middle Tennessee where they're farming people, that this is this, I don't know what you call it, but it's, I think a lot of Welsh and people from England. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think that's a true thing. Somebody just told me yesterday that the linguistics professor at UT said that people in natives from Tennessee have a unique accent or in words that they use that is very similar to Old England, proper English. So it is this, but I think that's mixed in with farming people. And farming people, in my little, it's not diverse. It's all, white families and a few African-American families that farmed alongside of us. And we all sound alike. We all sound alike. And I realized when I went to, I go on a field trip with my kids that some of the words my people have always used are words from like South Carolina, from Charleston, Savannah, down in there. And then people always get it mixed up and they go, are you from Mississippi? Are you from Georgia, South Carolina? But it's just this little pocket, I think, from Middle Tennessee that's rural talk mixed with, people that have come there to farm, I guess, from generations back. But you won't believe, Sid, how many people online have been they don't mean to be mean, but they're like, there's no way, this is fake. I can't even listen to it. And I'm like, did they really think that I've got the strength to fake this? And why would if I were going to fake something, it would be probably sexier. I'll just tell you, Sid. But I had years ago when I went to the University of Tennessee, there were girls, from Chattanooga and Memphis that went to private school, and they all wanted to be friends with me, and I loved them, and they were very, hoop-de-doo people, but they enjoyed me and my accent and my colloquialisms.
But yeah, it's a long way from Memphis to
it is
Adams and to Chattanooga, and you don't have to go all that far, and then people sound completely different.
Mm-hmm. I know, and I always thought of y'all in Memphis as I don't know, just like people with nice china. And I always thought, oh, that's where the hoop-de-doo people came from. Y'all just always had, pretty manners and nice china.
Well,
silverware.
The grass is always greener, I suppose. Leanne, what about sense of humor in your family? I mean, who other than you would you say is the funniest person in your family?
I think my mama, Lucille, her mama, Mary, was as round as she was short, wide as she was short, funny. Everybody loved her. She was she could be a lot. And, we were also all scared of her. But she was, she was very competitive and would, fight people in cards. If she played cards at the senior citizens, she'd get in a fight. But funny. And then my dad and my mom's got that from her. I think I got that from her. Then my daddy really is a good storyteller. He can tell a good story with good details. But we all used humor all the time. My sister thinks she's not funny and says, I didn't get any talent. But she did. She's got a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I married Chuck Morgan, who takes everything serious and does not want me to make a joke out of everything and says that I'm not serious enough. But then I had 3 precious children that are funny and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask about your career a little bit and how this kind of became a thing for you. I mean, you talk in the book about how you love to entertain people, going all the way back to that grocery store. I mean, you would, sit on the counter and be funny, and you kind of realized early on that you could make people laugh. And then, at some point, this starts to become something that you want to do for a living. Just tell me a little bit about that transition. Like, how did that happen? How did you kind of realize, this is something I could do, and actually I could make a living at this. I can do this. And there's something here.
Well, I had that dream in my heart from the time I was little. And then I've said this before in interviews, and I think it's true. I think, you go through life and your dreams seem further away, and people don't mean that you're around, but they go, well, you need to go to college, and you need to be this, you need to be a teacher, or you need to be a secretary, or you need to do, when you get to thinking, well, that's what I need to be doing. I don't need to, maybe I'm wrong for wanting to do this dream. And so I just went the traditional route and went to college, and I'm glad I did, and finished, and then married Chuck Morgan. And he moved me to Bean Station, Tennessee, in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And the whole time, I knew I wanted to be a mama. I wanted to be married and have a bunch of kids. And I wish I'd had more kids than I did. But I wanted a bunch of children. And then always thinking though, I'm gonna be a stand-up. Like before Chuck and I married, we went out to see my sister in California, and I got to go to the Comedy Store in LA. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, while we're out here, I want to go on the Hearst tour where you can see where dead people were murdered in LA. And he goes, well, that's the most twisted thing I've ever heard in my life. I had a ball. If you ever get to go see it, you ride in a Hearst and they show you where horrible things have happened.
That's morbid. Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay. Like little Sal Mineo, was stabbed in a alley. Okay. And see, I loved old Hollywood. And then I said, I want to go to the Comedy Store. And I walked in there and sat and watched Don Marrera and all these people, and my heart beat out of my body. And I truly had a physical reaction thinking, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what it is. Because I'd never been to a comedy club. And I didn't know, I thought I could make people laugh. And then, I don't know, I just saw what they did. And I thought, this is it. And I would watch Johnny Carson. And, when somebody was making it big on Johnny Carson, I always watched that. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is how I could do it. And then we go to Bean Station. And I told Chuck Morgan, I said, I want to stay home with these babies. And I promise I won't get my hair done. I won't buy anything to go on the wall. Just please let me stay home. And then I like a side hustle. And so because I do like to get my hair highlighted, said. So then my girlfriend said, I'm selling this jewelry like Mary Kay, like women sell Mary Kay or Tupperware. And why don't you try this? It'll give you a little money. You can, meet people and get your hair highlighted. And I started selling that jewelry in women's houses. And it was like my own little comedy club. And it really and truly, every night I would start getting my shtick. I had material, and I was supposed to be talking about jewelry and how to put a clip earring on a shoe and on a pump and change the look. And I had this whole presentation they wanted me to say, and I didn't say any of it. I would talk about, birthing and breastfeeding and hemorrhoids and all that. And the company noticed that I was booking about a year in advance. But that's when I knew, like, I could do this. I know I can do this. And they asked me to go speak at one of their big regional things at Opryland Hotel. And there was a professional comedian there that was entertainment for one of those big, Rahoo things where you go and get excited about your business. And they asked me to speak about how to get booked, how to book these parties. And he said to me afterwards, Leanne, you could be a stand-up. You could do this. And that meant the world to me. I never met a stand-up, didn't know anybody in stand-up. And so when Chuck and I moved to Texas, I found a comedy club and I did open mic one time, and they moved me up to opener. When you say tequila is 2 for $1 tonight. I started out there, and then I, moved my way up and got started in comedy then. So it's been over 20 something years, that I've been doing it. It's crazy.
But it seems to me it's not just being funny. Because you're being honest. And you've been through some stuff. You were married really young and divorced, and you talk about this in the book. You had a little bit of you had a rocky start, and you had a rocky road for a while, and made some bad decisions, and it seems to me like there's a funny part of what you're doing, and it is hilarious, but then there's also you're talking about some real stuff, and you're kind of telling it like it is, and you're really telling your story. And it seems like that is also a big part of what people are responding to. Is that fair?
I think so, Sid. And I think that the reason why this happened to me in my 50s for it to really take off is that, I've been through perimenopause and menopause. Once a woman goes through that, it's almost like, I don't care. I don't care. And I've always talked about my children and my personal life. I've always been very open. My sister would say, too open. But I've always been honest about everything. And all my materials always been about birthing and then, elementary school, middle school, my marriage, all of that. But I think that's why people are responding to me is that I'm authentic. I got to give you that. I can't do math. I got a lot of flaws, Sid, but I'm authentic. This is who I am, and they know that. I think they trust me, and they know that. And I think people are interested in real people and real stories.
Well, speaking of real stories, I mean, how do you negotiate this with your family? I mean, a lot of your material is about your family. I mean, you talk about your husband and your kids, and it seems like everyone is kind of fair game. I mean, do your kids ever say, now, mom, that is off limits. You cannot.
Let me tell you, Sid, middle school was a dry time for me. Nobody wanted me to speak their name. I had to do old material. They all said to me, "Don't you dare say a word," because my boy caught me talking about his puberty on local radio in Knoxville on WIVK, and I had dropped him off at school, and I really didn't think anything of it. I was just saying like he had grown hair under this arm, but not this. I don't know what I said. He sounded like Johnny Cash. And one of his friends was having an orthodontist appointment, and he heard it in his mama's car and went back to school and said, "You won't believe what your mama said." And Charlie said, "Don't you ever." And I said, "I won't, I promise." And Maggie, I remember she didn't even want me to come to school. They were so embarrassed, about everything. And their hormones were crazy. And I remember her saying to me, "What are you doing here in those yoga pants?" So I wasn't even allowed to walk around school in a yoga pant, which I'm sure I looked terrible in them, Sid. But anyway, middle school was a very dry time. And then high school, they were like, "We don't care what you say." And then college, they're like, "We don't care." And now they're like, "You do what you do, you girl. We don't care." Now, Chuck Morgan, one time when I first got started, I said something about, now he wouldn't care if I said it. I said, "I want to get my breast done." After I breastfed 3 babies, I said, "I want to get my breast done, but it's been a bad mobile home year." And he's in the mobile home business, and he got so mad and said, "Don't you ever say that I can't take care of you and my family. I could write a check for your breast right now." And I said, "I'm sorry. I will never." He is very much a provider and head of our family, and that's biblical. And I never said another thing about all that. Now, when I have said, "Chuck, do you mind if I say so and so?" He goes, "No, I don't care." He's very secure about that kind of stuff. And he knows he's peculiar, Sid. He knows all this is true. He knows that he doesn't talk. He knows that I just sit in silence and talk to myself.
And he knows that he's probably good material. So by this point, he should know.
Yeah, and he'll even say, "I've got more fans than you've got, Leanne." And every once in a while, I mean, he's still working a big job, but like if I'm in Nashville, say at the Ryman, he'll say, "I'll sell this merchandise." And he's a salesman, and he'll get out there and take selfies with people, and I'm sure they don't see his teeth. I'm sure he does not smile. But he says, "I can do this. Let me do it." So, yeah, everybody, honest to goodness, has been wonderful about that. And, and I'm talking about, when I said, okay, the one thing that I thought that blew up and really helped me was a bit about my middle child being 16 and rolling her eyes, and we were scared to death of her. She was mean as a snake, and she wouldn't let me breathe out of my own nostrils and wouldn't let me chew cereal in my own home. That blew up because everybody's been through that. Everybody says, my child, my girl at 16, 17 we were scared to death of her. And then I tell people, they come back around, they end up your best friend. But I said, "Maggie, does that hurt your feelings that I say that?" She goes, "No, girl. I know I was hateful. I'm okay. I don't care." So thank the Lord for them. And I mean, they're my material, and it's every day, and everything that I've ever said. I mean, it's true. The one thing that I embellished, which Chuck goes, "You embellish everything." But the one thing that I really embellished was when I said years ago, this was old material when I first got started, and I got pregnant with my 3rd baby, and I went and pee-peed on a stick. at Walmart in a stall, and I had my 3-year-old boy, and my Maggie would have been about 1, and I peed on that stick, and Charlie looked at me and said, "Is it positive?" And he really didn't. He was 3. But I was just trying to illustrate how we were all in shock.
Well, it sounds better that way. Leanne, I've got to ask you about Tennessee. You're in Knoxville. You went to Tennessee twice, actually. Right?
Yeah. Dropped out. Honey smoked cigarettes and went back.
And then you went back. So I don't know. I haven't heard much about your interest in football. If you've done bits on that or anything, but I'm just curious. What's your relationship to Tennessee when it comes to sports? I mean, you know how obsessed Tennessee fans are. You know how crazy they can get, and I'm one of them. So what about you? Are you a lifelong Tennessee fan?
Yes. I mean, I really became a fan when I went up here. Before, my little daddy was always a Vanderbilt fan. I'm ashamed to tell you that. But we were living outside of Nashville, And I think my uncles would sit and talk about University of Tennessee and go Vols, and it just turned him off. But anyway, yes, I've always been a fan, and I love it now. And I think I'm going to be one of those little old women that wears a sweatshirt that says "Go Vols" on it, and have 2 orange balls hanging for earrings, and I'm going to make a dip. But I do love football, and I tell you when I really got interested in it, my children went to a little small school here, and there was 2 boys that went and played for UT, and we loved them. And I really got into it then to watch them. But I went through that whole Lane Kiffin, and I don't know, I resented Lane Kiffin, and I really didn't know that much about it. I like to find out people's personal business. I'll just tell you, Sid. And I resented him and talked a big game, and I would get out at shows and say, Lane Kiffin and ought to be arrested. And then now I think, I hope Lane Kiffin hadn't heard that. And I tell people, I think he has been washed in the blood, and I think that he is really doing better, and he did a cleanse. But anyway, I talked about him like a dog, and then little Butch Jones came along. And he's got a beautiful wife and Precious. And then, I get all up in that now, and I love it. And I love SEC football. And I've talked many times about little wound up Nick Saban on stage. And, I like to get into all that, but it's mainly just like their personal business. But I do watch it and I love it. But I don't get to go to games because I'm always touring in the fall. But Chuck Morgan's there and watching and screaming and almost fighting 2 fraternity boys that are drunk. Chuck thinks he's the police, tries to break it up. And now my grandbabies just went to Neyland Stadium for the first time and got to see Smokey. They're 3.5 and 15 months. Had a ball. And my son went to Berry College in Rome, Georgia, but his wife got her MBA at UT. And Charlie, if he ever goes back to school, I think would like to go to UT. And my middle child graduated, was a Chi Omega from the University of Tennessee. And let me tell you this, UT, God love them. And I hope nobody ever reveals my GPA. But they gave me Alumni of the Year for Arts and Entertainment in 2012. And my little mom and daddy came up and cried their eyes out. And it really did make me feel good knowing that, Sid, I didn't have an easy time. At UT, I wasn't prepared to go to a big university like that. I was from this tiny little town. I didn't even know, I didn't have enough math. We had one language that you could take, Spanish. I didn't have to take it because I was a forward on the basketball team. So I got out of it. And then I got to UT and didn't have Spanish, didn't have a foreign language. But anyway, struggled, got married, went back, finished. So thankful for my degree. And it gave me so much confidence in myself. Then they give me that award. And I felt it was precious. But I also felt terrible because Chuck Morgan was sitting there by me, who made straight A's through undergraduate and MBA's, and nobody gave him anything. And I'm telling you, my GPA, I will go to my grave with my GPA and my ACT score. You'll never know My children, when I get the flu, they'll try to like stand over me. They know I'm hallucinating with fever, and they'll go, "What's your ACT score?" But I've never told them.
But
So
you got that
anyway,
piece of paper. You
they,
got that piece. You
I
got that
did.
piece of paper.
I got that piece of paper, and I'm so proud of it. I'm proud that I went back and did it after something tragic. Being married at 21. I look back on it. When I read this book on audio last couple of weeks ago, seeing the main thing I took away from it was, man, I was stupid. That's what I thought. I thought, Lord, have mercy, I was a ding dong. And then I went through a spell where I thought, you know what? I've got to forgive my little self from 17 to 25. I got to let that go. She didn't know.
Right. Nobody does. Nobody does.
Nobody does.
You just hope you get through it.
Yes.
And
let me
if
tell
you do, you get some great material.
You get some great material, my darling. And you can also empathize when you're interviewing parents in Christian school when they say, I went to Auburn and I did a lot of things I shouldn't have. And they start confessing so their little children could go to a Christian school. And you're like, you don't have to tell us. You don't have to tell us about your sin.
Well, Leanne, I'm glad you emerged from all that. And I know that a lot of your fans are too. And they, as I said before, they relate to you. And I'm curious, as you're touring the country and you're talking to all these people, and you must see some of them, before or after your performances. And I'm wondering, what do they say to you? I mean, what do they come up to you and say? What's kind of a theme of what you hear from your fans when you get the chance to talk to them?
They almost always, they say, oh my gosh, you were living my life. Oh my gosh, you are married to my husband. Oh my gosh, girl. She said, are you, I had for years though, I've had people say, are you in our closet watching us? And I did not realize I really was talking about my own experience, but it's universal. It really, what I talk about, and years ago when I would be in Hollywood for some television deal that didn't make it, and they would say, put me up at one of the comedy clubs in LA, and I would be, with my accent. One producer said to me one time, he said, Leanne, I have realized that you are really not a Southern comedian. What you talk about is universal. You do it with a very thick accent, country accent, but what you talk about, every woman in the United States, has felt terrible in a low-rising blue jean. Just everybody's been to Weight Watchers and failed several times and keep going back. Don't know why. It's just everything I talk about. And I didn't even plan it that way. I was just up there talking out of my head. Really, Sid, I must have needed a lot of attention. I'm a ham.
Well, Leanne, I just have one more question for you. What does it mean to you to be Southern?
Oh my gosh, Sid, I could kind of cry. I think I'm proud to be from the South. I wish people knew. I think they do. I think they're beginning to see how wonderful it is. I think we are creative, fun-loving, kind, hospitable people. I can't imagine growing up anywhere else. I think we're pretty nifty. I think Southern is nifty. And I know people have a bunch of, ideas about the South and all that kind of stuff. And I just wish they knew what I knew. It's magical, I think.
Well, I love the word nifty. That's one I haven't heard in a while. I'm going to run with that. Well, Leanne Morgan, congrats on the book and the tour and the Netflix special and everything else. And thanks so much for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Sid, you angel from heaven, thank you for having me. I have had a ball. Does it have to end?
It sure doesn't. No, we can just, we'll do a sequel. How about that?
Okay. All right, you doll.
Let's bring it back. All right. Okay. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you, my darling.